G'day Internet, Max right here, and we have a long time friend of the channel here. Great to have you back on the channel, Dr. Jeff Ross. Jeff, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, Max, thanks for having me. I always love being on your show.
So let's see. We're a couple of days after the announcement. It was a very all the markets seem a little bit boring. I see. I'd like a very predictable 0.25% interest rate rise. We got Bitcoin been loitering at $30,000 plus or minus a few $100 for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks now, almost pushing 2 months, I think. Tell me what's happening. I feel like the snake is coiling up, or the spring is coiling up, ready to spring. What are your visions here? Are we going to see some volatility here in the near future?
Yeah, volatility has definitely come in for Bitcoin. It's you can tell that everybody's just bored all over Twitter, wondering for some sort of price action, wondering when it's going to happen. The longer this volatility squeeze kind of goes on, the more that something's going to happen soon. So it could be up or down. For me, the main reason why we're seeing this just sideways action that's been going on for about 2 months now, I think it comes down to liquidity again. Liquidity, for its part, has been basically sideways to down, both in the U.S. and worldwide, for 2 to 3 months now. And when that happens, it's just hard for risk assets to catch a bid. The AI stocks, they did pretty well, but now even they're kind of slowing down a little bit. I would expect those to take a bit of a breather, have maybe even a pretty substantial correction in the near term. But because when you have this sideways liquidity action, it's hard for me to get either too bullish or too bearish. I'm just kind of, they call me Dr. Crab now this year. Last year it was Dr. Bear. And I just continue to think sideways is what we're going to see. We may chop, we may get some rips higher a little bit, but I think then they're just going to be subdued again and they're going to correct back down again. Bitcoin, for its part, it was sort of at overbought levels back in, let me get my stuff up. So kind of back in mid-April, and then it's kind of been chopping sideways since then. Now, to me, at least on the daily charts, it looks pretty kind of oversold, but not crazy oversold. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a dip down, kind of a scare down to maybe 26, 27, somewhere in that range. I would actually love that because it would probably reset all the momentum indicators, and we could head back up again in a bull market. But for now, sideways, boring, nothing too exciting going on out there.
And to be fair, this is exactly what we both predicted at the beginning of the year. For those of for people who follow our conversation, we tend to have them every month or so around about that. We've both been saying the whole year it's going to be a sideways year. It's what it is. But this is the good news about this playing out. I think both of our predictions for 2024, 25 are for me. It's 2024 is bullish. And 2025 is freaking amazing. Is kind of the base case. A lot of things can happen between now and then, but that's kind of the base case. So as I see our predictions play out, it kind of warms my heart. I can be patient enough for a year or two. That's fine. So tell me, a little bit of news caught my eyes today, and I'm not sure how valid it is. I wonder if you heard it. Did Coinbase get told recently to delist everything except Bitcoin? Have you heard this? And tell me a little bit more.
I believe it just came. Yeah, I believe it just came out very early this morning or late last night, somewhere in that time frame, from the SEC, basically saying they demand that Coinbase delists everything except Bitcoin, and so obviously that's causing a bit of an uproar. And to be fair, for the other side, the SEC kind of got slapped a little bit, right, with the whole Ripple case, right? It could be they deemed it a security when they first offered it to investors, but then on the secondary offerings, once it was on the exchanges, they're saying no, that wasn't. It's not. It doesn't actually meet the definition of the Howey test, and so therefore they are not securities at that point. That was a slap in the face to the SEC. So that basically gives hope to the crypto side. And so what I anticipate happening this time around is the Coinbase is probably going to come back and say, like, you can't prove that these are securities. Like, who do you think you are, sort of. And I think they'll have a little bit of muscle now and maybe a little bit of swagger in their step as they kind of punch back to the SEC. So I'm just really curious to see how all of this turns out. I don't think anything is written in stone, either very positive or very negative. The SEC is trying to clamp down and basically a Bitcoin only kind of jurisdiction here in the U.S. They may or may not succeed. So I'm just kind of watching. I got my popcorn. I'm watching with interest to see what happens.
It's a very, very interesting concept. As Bitcoiners, we wouldn't really expect regulators to be so pro Bitcoin, but they're very much hands on heads. Like, it's like, okay, Bitcoin is good. Bitcoin's gold. Like, this has got to be, like, thinking forward to the next bull market. This has got to be unbelievably reassuring for the big money, the institutional players coming in and, you know, apportioning some part of their balance sheet to a reserve asset like Bitcoin. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, I think if you are in the pro Bitcoin camp, there's nothing but good news that's been coming out from a regulatory standpoint. Like, it's all of the best case scenario for me when I was looking, 1, 2, 3 years ago, as far as where is this going to diverge? There's Bitcoin and then there's crypto. What has become of the crypto industry, and how do regulators see it? Do they lump in Bitcoin with crypto, or does crypto get lumped in with Bitcoin? Gary Gensler has made it very, very, very clear that he sees Bitcoin as just a commodity, right? Commodity money, basically, and then the rest of crypto he deems as securities. Right or wrong, by the way, I think it's incorrect to lump some of the cryptos in with the rest of the proof of stake crypto space. That I think the proof of work coins, even though I don't like them and don't trade at all in those kind of things, I think that it's hard to say that those are securities as far as I'm concerned, because to me they're similar to Bitcoin. They're decentralized. They're proof of work, that kind of stuff. So yes, if you are a Bitcoiner, and that's what I am, right? I like to affectionately call myself a former degen crypto trader turned just kind of a hardcore Bitcoiner. I don't see anything but good news that's come out. So I think during the next bull market, I think we're going to see the institutions finally get on board, and they finally have the infrastructure in place to make a run at Bitcoin themselves and to invest in Bitcoin for the longer term. I think it's nothing but bullish for the price action. As you mentioned, 2024 should be solid. 2025 could be nuts. So yeah. In a good way.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So I'm wondering, do you know, my apologies, do you know if if Coinbase are going to actually delist? Do you know the process from here, or is it too early in the days in the news cycle for us to know that? I'm assuming they say no and they go and fight it in court, but maybe they have to say yes and go fight it in court. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I'm not an attorney, right? So I don't want to give any sort of advice, so please take everything I say with a grain of salt. But the way I understand it from listening to attorneys in this space talk about it, this is just sort of the shot from the bow from the SEC again towards Coinbase. My guess is that Coinbase is going to kind of fight against it. I think they're going to push back and they're just going to say, no, we're not going to delist these coins. Come at us. That's what I'm guessing is going to happen. We'll see how it ends. I just honestly don't know how it's going to end. I wouldn't want to be heavily speculating in cryptos at this moment, because it could still turn out pretty poorly for them, and the SEC could flush all of them out of the U.S. It wouldn't be the end of the industry, right? I just think they'd go offshore, and then they'd make a run, in more crypto-friendly jurisdictions. But again, from a Bitcoin perspective, I think it's just kind of nothing but either non-news or good news.
Gotcha. If we take the camps of, I consider Bitcoin a camp. I consider the stable coins and the asset-backed stable coins, so like the Tether, etc., another camp, and then you've got all your other cryptos. I feel like the SEC has said, like, Bitcoin and the stable coins are good to go, and it's just the other things. And then even that, like it's just the way in which they were the list of the ICO, as it were, is what they don't like about it. How those things were. So the projects can still stay. Maybe the founders go to jail or bankrupt or whatever it is, but the projects, so those things are still coming. But if I look at that landscape, to me, the thing that fixes the world and has a very quick acceleration into adoption of these kinds of assets is the stablecoin and the Bitcoin are the two most important things. The crypto stuff can do fun stuff and peripheries and blah, blah, blah. But the actual important stuff for the day-to-day lives and the thing that helps society, in my mind, is the Bitcoin. Bitcoin's an absolute must, but I also have a little bit of love in my heart for the stable coins, because I see them as massively helping adoption of digital currencies. And so if those two things are in place, I just have nothing but good feels for Bitcoin. It's just all up for me. And so as I look at that, to me, it's just constantly getting de-risked. And again, looking forward to the next couple of years, like we've been saying, this is sideways year. This is accumulation year. If you're not accumulating Bitcoin right now, I just don't know what's going on in your mind.
Right. To me, that just shows you don't understand it, or you're in such a tough circumstance, right? I mean, I don't mean to downplay what the kind of the bottom half of the U.S. as far as income perspectives. They're struggling right now, right? This high inflation of the last couple of years has eaten into all of their income, and then now the student debt forgiveness program is over, coming in September here in just like a month or so. It's going to be even harder for them to survive. So it's harder for them to stack sats, right? And so I don't mean to downplay that at all. But if you have the ability to save and invest at all, and you're not putting something into Bitcoin, to me it's almost foolish at this point. It's been de-risked from back in like 2020, 2021, the prominent hedge fund managers came on board. Drunken Miller, Paul Tudor Jones, Bill Miller came out, talked about his Bitcoin perspective. Even Ray Dalio touched on it. That took away career risk for hedge fund managers to get into the Bitcoin space. And then fast forward to this year, basically when the king of ESG, Larry Fink, went from anti-Bitcoin, it's boiling the oceans, it's terrible for the environment, to pro-Bitcoin. We're all for it. It's an international asset, that kind of stuff. I still don't think he's a hardcore Bitcoiner. I just think he's changed the narrative. And what that did is it basically took the career risk away from financial planners, investment advisors. Like, hey, look, you can invest in this safely now, and you're not going to lose your job, if you have a bad year because of Bitcoin. To me, that's a massive change. And that also allows, we've talked about the flood of baby boomer money, which is still basically not in Bitcoin. There's a small minority of baby boomers that are into Bitcoin, but for the most part, they're the most adversarial towards it. Having Larry Fink come on board, having all of these big traditional money managers and brokerage houses come on board, that opens the floodgates. And so a portion of that $72 trillion in assets that the baby boomers hold can start trickling into Bitcoin, and maybe it will flood into Bitcoin. I think it will flood in 2025. And so again, nothing but positive. If you're into good positive price action, I think we have good times coming in the next few years.
And even, I agree with everything you just said. And even if that doesn't happen with the baby boomer money, we are now well and truly into the window where I'm trying to say it as delicately as possible, but the boomers start to expire, and the money just goes down to their descendants. And that generation is a lot more. So one way or another, although that wealth in boomer retirement accounts and whatever else, it is coming into crypto. It's just, again, you think of that in the next 10 years. It's just a crazy time for Bitcoin. Again, de-risking the whole situation. I think an important narrative, this is something I mentioned on a podcast, but early on, like 2013, 14, 15, 16, I was teaching people getting into Bitcoin. And there was just so many stories of people who were like saving, let's say $30,000 a deposit for a $300,000 house. And they were saving, and some people have an income that could jump over the hurdle and save fast enough to get a deposit for a house. But for some portion, probably about 20, 25, 30% of the population, their income wasn't high enough to get over the fact that their houses were going up so fast. It's like, okay, how long is it going to take you to save the $30,000 for your deposit for this house, for example? And it'll be like, well, it'll probably take me about 4 or 5 years to do that. Well, by the time they got the $30,000, the house had gone to $600,000, and they needed a $60,000 deposit. And what happened 4 years later? They had $30,000 still left to save. It's like they literally went nowhere. But the people who were saving, just dollar cost averaging, just like using Bitcoin as a savings account, they, by the time their 4 or 5 years were up, they didn't have the $30,000 deposit they just sold the crypto, for $600,000 and bought the house outright, debt free. So those kinds of things, like those stories are just everywhere at this point. And people say this, and again, this is the year to be accumulating Bitcoin. So I'm just repeating that and every time I have an interview with people, it's like, guys, this is the curse for me, and I'm sure for you as well. When it's the boom times and the price is going nuts, and our views go through the roof on our channels and our interviews and all those things, it's like, yeah, you got to learn about Bitcoin. You got to get into it. Is this the absolutely best time? No. When we were getting much fewer views, we should have been watching. So that was that. There's the BlackRock and the EFT. I haven't heard anything about that in the last few weeks. Have you heard anything? That's all behind closed doors? Do we know?
They're evaluating all this stuff right now, so I don't think we'll hear anything for another. I think mid-August something comes up. I think the ARC 21 fund comes up first, because I think they're first in line after the reshuffling. So we'll see. Again, I don't think it's a coincidence that the SEC is coming down hard after Coinbase, like the what we just talked about at the beginning of the show, that they want Coinbase to delist every crypto other than Bitcoin. I think it's because they want Coinbase to be cleaned up so that they can approve of these ETFs. That's my read on it. And if Coinbase continues to resist, I think it makes the passage of a spot Bitcoin ETF harder to push through. And in the eyes of the SEC, that's how I view it. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I think if the SEC, if Coinbase does not comply, I would think it may push the approval of a spot Bitcoin ETF down the road a little bit. But if Coinbase does, surprise us and they do comply and they push everything off, I would not be surprised to see the approval of a spot Bitcoin ETF soon thereafter.
That would be interesting, but thank you for that timeline. So I am aware ARK is the first one in line because there's been plenty, but they've been rejected. ARK is the first one in line to get an announcement, and that is mid-August. Okay, but I think even BlackRock's is due to be announced this year, so we should find out all this stuff this year. So very, very cool. All right, Jeff, I greatly appreciate it. Next time we speak, hopefully VIX is a little higher, there's a little more commotion, and but it's just a great time to accumulate. So thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Thanks, Max.